My husband was kneeling in the middle of our living room, eyes red, hands trembling as he handed me his phone. The screen lit up with messages full of love and sexting with a woman he'd met through an online game. "I love her, but I still love you. I want both," he said, as if that made any sense. After 12 years together, 4 years of marriage, and overcoming so many obstacles to finally build our dream home, I felt like my world was starting to crack apart. He didn't want to leave me. This wasn't like the affairs I'd read about or feared. He wanted to expand love. He wanted polyamory. And I, someone who never imagined having to compete with a virtual woman, now had to decide, hold on, let go, or share. Everything started innocently, at least that's how he tells it. A lingering cold kept my husband out of work for a while. He's always been an active person, someone who likes hands-on work and constantly looks for ways to stay busy and useful. So when his illness forced him to stay in bed, he turned to an online game to pass the time. At first, it was just casual playing with a group of strangers, but they grew close and began organizing regular weekly sessions. I didn't think much of it, assuming it helped lift his spirits while he was stuck at home. What I didn't know was that in that virtual world, he met her. Her, a woman in her 30s with a gentle voice, a sense of humor, and an uncanny way of understanding him. They started talking more, beyond the game. Private messages, long phone calls. Slowly, their connection moved beyond friendship. He said it all happened so gradually that he didn't realize he was changing. He told me she said things I no longer said, laughed at his jokes in a way I hadn't in a long time. And then one day, when she confessed she loved him, he told her he felt the same. Suddenly, it all became real to him. But instead of ending it right there, they tried to just be friends, to keep things within boundaries. But as he later admitted, they couldn't resist. I read the messages they sent each other, sweet words, intimate fantasies, inside jokes I didn't understand. A little world they created, where I was just an outsider. He told me he never met her in real life, that he turned down every invitation to do so, that it was all just emotional. But I knew better. Feelings don't need touch to hurt. The pain wasn't just about what he did, but about what he shared, the part of his heart that used to belong to me, given to someone else. He used to be the one person I trusted without question, the one I believed would never keep secrets from me. Yet for weeks, he'd been living a second life, in a world I was never invited into. And when I confronted him, instead of ending it, he said he wanted to keep both. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I just got up, grabbed my coat, and walked out of the house. I needed air. I needed to think. I hadn't known that betrayal could feel so quiet, like a cold wind blowing through your chest, soundless, leaving nothing but emptiness. And as I walked into the night, I didn't just wonder whether he still loved me. I asked myself a harder question. Do I still love a man like that? I don't know how long I walked that night. I just remember the cold wind seeping through my coat and my heart feeling heavy as lead. His words kept echoing in my head. I love her, but I love you too. How can someone love two people at once without hurting anyone? I'd thought a lot about betrayal before, but I never imagined the person behind it would be the one who held me every night, the one who squeezed my hand during our wedding and vowed to love only you for life. I came home the next morning. He was sitting at the dining table, dark circles under his eyes from a sleepless night. I didn't say a word. I just sat across from him, and that's how the first conversation began. Long, heavy, but honest. He poured everything out. He told me how the messages had become intimate, then the private calls, and the moment he realized he'd accidentally fallen for someone else. What surprised me wasn't the truth itself, but how he admitted it. No resistance, no cover-ups, no shifting blame. He looked at me, voice raspy, and said he felt guilty, that he didn't know how things got to this point, that every conversation with her brought both joy and pain, because he knew he was betraying the woman who shared his bed and his life. I never meant to deceive you, he said. I tried to end it, but every time she messaged me, my heart wavered. I never thought I'd become this kind of person. Part of me wanted to throw a glass of water in his face, to scream that he had no right to waver while being my husband. But I didn't do any of that. I just looked at him, exhausted, faded, because I could see it clearly. He was wrestling with his own emotions. And just like me, he was scared of what had just happened. I thought a lot about forgiveness in those moments. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean letting it slide. It means acknowledging that something is broken, and if love is still there, we try to pick up the pieces, even knowing the cracks may never fully heal. And in his eyes at that moment, I saw someone trying, awkwardly, but sincerely. I told him I still loved him, that I appreciated his honesty and the fact that he came back to tell me everything instead of sneaking around. But I also made it clear I was hurting. I was wounded, and I didn't know if I could ever trust him like I used to. It was a quiet kind of loss, one he may never fully understand. He nodded, took my hand, and cried. We spent the following week talking about our relationship, about the things that had worn down over time, about the distance neither of us had noticed growing, but that had grown all the same. Sometimes we sat in silence for hours, just feeling the sadness creeping into every corner of our marriage. I decided to try forgiveness. Not because I was weak, but because I believed that if there was even a sliver of hope, it deserved a chance. I told him I wouldn't be able to forget right away, but if he truly wanted to fix things, I would walk with him, slowly, carefully, and more honestly than ever before. I thought that would be the new beginning. But then he made a new proposal, an open marriage, so we could both love other people. And once again, everything inside me shattered. I thought that after everything, after the tears and sleepless nights, after you held my hand and begged for another chance, the worst was behind us. I believed my heart was big enough to forgive, and that our love was strong enough to mend the cracks in our marriage. But just when I started to believe in healing, you pushed me into a new kind of darkness. This time not with a painful truth, but with a proposal. One that, to me, hurt even more than your original betrayal. I want to open our marriage, you said, gently, as if it were a logical, civilized, and fair idea. It's not that I don't love you. I do. But I can't deny my feelings for her either. I don't want to sneak around. I want to do this right. For all three of us. I stared at you, stunned. Images rushed through my head. You laughing with her while I was home taking care of our child. You calling her after kissing me goodnight. And worse, I pictured a day when I became the third wheel in my own marriage. You said you wanted to make things right, I choked out. But now you're asking to keep the same wrong feelings, just changing the method to make it more acceptable? You stayed silent, then said, I know this isn't easy, but I think if we set clear boundaries, if we're honest and build this together, maybe we won't lose each other. And I won't have to bury a part of my heart. It sounded like some emotional freedom philosophy. But to me, it felt like avoidance, a way to legitimize betrayal. Maybe it was because we had a few friends who talked about polyamory, about love without limits, about how feelings don't have to be confined. But I never imagined my husband applying that to our life, especially not after hurting me the way he did. I told you clearly, I don't hate or judge people who live that way. But I'm not one of them. I grew up believing love came with full commitment. To me, love isn't just a feeling, it's a daily choice. A choice to love one person, even when feelings waver. Because if everyone gives themselves permission to love multiple people just because they feel something, what meaning does loyalty still hold? You asked me to think about it, said there's no pressure, that you just wanted to open up a possibility for discussion. But I saw right through it. This was your way of not having to choose. And for me, it was a new cut, slicing into trust that had barely begun to heal. I walked away from that conversation feeling more disappointed than the night you admitted the affair, because this time, you weren't swept up in emotion. You were calm, intentional. You made a choice. And even though you called it honesty and transparency, all I saw was selfishness, an attempt to redefine fidelity to fit your own mistake. Forgiveness is a hard journey, But sharing the heart of the person you love, that's something entirely different. I'm beginning to understand forgiveness is meant to heal. But what you're asking is for me to accept a wound that will never close. And I don't know if I'm strong enough to live with that. I spent many days afterward wrestling with myself. The question that kept looping in my head was no longer, does he love me? But, can I live like this? Could I learn to share my husband with someone else, his emotions, his attention, his time, and still call it love? The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was standing at a cruel crossroads. Either lose him or keep him, but no longer be whole. I didn't talk to anyone for a few days. I was afraid that if I spoke, I'd break down in front of my friends, afraid of the pity in their eyes. But I also knew I couldn't carry this pain alone. I arranged to meet my best friend, someone who'd been with me since college. The moment she saw me, she knew something was wrong. When I told her, holding nothing back, she was silent for a long time before saying, "You're not crazy. You have the right to not accept this." That simple sentence made me burst into tears. In the days when my husband kept talking about openness, about deeper understanding through multiple relationships, I had started doubting my own feelings. I wondered if I was selfish, old-fashioned, not modern enough to embrace polyamory. But when my friend said that I had the right to say no to a lifestyle that wasn't meant for me, I finally realized I had been pushed into a corner I was too afraid to fight my way out of. That night, I went home with a clearer mind. I told him that I'd thought long and hard, and that while I loved him, I couldn't live in a relationship where love was divided. I couldn't sit at home waiting for him to return from dates with someone else, couldn't smile while he sent sweet messages to her and still called me my dear wife. He didn't get angry, just sad, deeply sad. He said, "I didn't think this would hurt you so much. I thought you'd understand." I replied, "I do understand, but I don't accept it." And those are two different things. We didn't fight. There were no shouting matches, no insults, just a quiet breakup between two people who once loved each other deeply, but no longer shared the same definition of love. He moved out a week later, taking half his clothes but leaving most of his belongings, like he was still hoping to come back one day. But I knew the only thing that could bring him back was if I changed who I was. And I couldn't do that. The first days after he left were a blur of emptiness and relief. I cried, I raged, then I calmed. But more than anything, I started to find myself again. The woman who once dreamed of a small family, of dinner tables filled with laughter, of a marriage built on absolute trust. That dream had shattered, but that didn't mean I had to accept the broken pieces as all I had left. I started journaling, writing out the pain so I wouldn't have to carry it inside. Writing about him, about me, about us, as a way to say goodbye to something that had once been so beautiful. And from those pages, for the first time, I stopped writing about us. I wrote about me. A new journey had begun, one without him. But at least, it was a path I chose, not one forced on me, not out of compromise, but because I deserve to be loved in a way I believe is right. Time passed, and what surprised me the most was I started to feel grateful. Not because I lost him, and certainly not for what he did to me, but because through that loss, I found a version of myself I had long forgotten during the years of our marriage. I realized that for so long, I had lived for the us more than for the me. And now, for the first time in over a decade, I was reclaiming ownership of my emotions, my choices, and my happiness. At first, every morning felt like a challenge. The house was silent, meals were no longer set for two, and the bedroom had lost the warmth of another presence. I once burst into tears just seeing his favorite coffee mug still sitting on the shelf. But gradually, the silence stopped being haunting. It became space. Space for me to hear my own heart again. Something I had ignored for years in the midst of worries, sacrifices, and expectations. I started spending time on the little things I used to miss, finishing books I had left unfinished, arranging flowers in the morning, doing yoga under soft sunlight. I learned to love myself unconditionally, not to change or win anyone back, but to honor my own existence. One day, while cleaning out a closet, I came across an old letter he had written to me on our second wedding anniversary. In it, he called me the strongest woman he had ever known, the only one who made the world feel warm and whole. I read it without crying this time. No resentment, just a sense of peace. Maybe he meant it at the time, and maybe the love I gave him truly made him feel whole, until he no longer had the strength to hold on to it. I don't blame him anymore. I just feel sad that he chose a path I couldn't follow. We don't talk much these days. Occasionally he checks in with a message, and I reply with the kindness that's appropriate. I don't hate him. There's just no room for him in my new life. I still believe in love. But this time, it's a love that comes with understanding, with clear boundaries, and with unwavering respect for myself. I know that if one day I meet someone willing to walk beside me in a truly committed relationship, I'll be ready. But I'm no longer in a rush. I no longer place my happiness in someone else's hands. Now, every time I pass by a mirror, I see a strong woman smiling back at me. I was once broken. I once doubted my own worth. But I didn't lose myself. I made the right choice, even though it hurt deeply at first. And that very choice saved me from a life where I would have had to suffer under the illusion of shared love. Sometimes losing someone isn't the worst thing that can happen. The worst is losing yourself without even realizing it. And I was lucky, because I chose to keep myself, even if it meant letting go of someone who once meant everything. Endings aren't always sad. Sometimes they're the beginning of the life we should have been living all along. To those who have walked through the pain of betrayal, who have faced the choice between forgiveness and saving themselves, you are not alone. Some wounds don't need to bleed to break us, and sometimes the right choice comes with a pain that feels unbearable. But one day, you'll see that standing up for yourself is the greatest gift you can give to your wounded heart. Don't let anyone convince you that love means sacrificing the parts of yourself you cannot afford to lose. You have the right to set boundaries, the right to be loved fully, or to love no one at all, as long as you don't betray yourself. True love will never ask you to shrink just so someone else can hold the whole world in their hands. Choose the one who chooses you completely. And before anything else, always choose yourself. That's the end of this story. If you enjoyed it, please leave a comment, like, share, and subscribe to support us in making more videos like this. Thank you for listening. Goodbye, and see you next time.